First, having the job title explorer is pretty rare these days. After all, not much left on Earth that hasn't been discovered, except for Antarctica. Much of it is still unknown. Mark Terry is an explorer and filmmaker whose most recent film was the only one about Antarctica that delegates at the recent Copenhagen conference were invited to watch. Ziya caught up with Mark to find out what he uncovered.
Mark Terry, member of the exclusive Explorers Club. Until recently, he'd set foot on every continent but one. Today, he gives us a new look at the seventh continent in his film, The Antarctica Challenge, A Global Warning. So Mark Terry, you have probably one of the coolest jobs in the world. You're an explorer and a filmmaker. Is this what you always wanted to be, or?
Yeah, I think so. When I went to university, it was to study journalism. So I was always interested in covering the story and bringing it to people. And what better way to do it than to go to exotic places around the world?
So where have you been?
Been to Angel Falls in the Valley of Canaima in Venezuela. We climbed the top of that. The Sahara Desert, Mount Pilatus in Switzerland, the Sars Mountains in Kosovo, and Australia, of course.
Right, and I know you just got back from, well, your film, Antarctica Challenge, is all about Antarctica. It's quite unique in a way, isn't it?
Yes, it is the highest, the driest, the coldest continent on Earth. And right now, it's the one continent on Earth that's warming the fastest.
One of the things that surprised me the most when I saw your film was this place called Deception Island. And I know I've always pictured Antarctica, you know, you see it on the Google Maps or what have you, it's covered in ice, but this place was totally green.
Yeah, it completely shocked me. In fact, when we landed there, I actually thought we had left Antarctica. You know, I remember asking the expedition leader, I go, are you sure we're in the right place here?
Right. Now, when did this actually start happening?
About 5 years ago. That's when the first signs of new life started to emerge. And one of the botanists that we had on our crew could not identify the vegetation that was growing there. So it's actually believed to be prehistoric.
So now, as an explorer, I know this is slightly controversial, but is there a small part of you that almost, and I dread to say this, but almost looks forward to climate change, so you'll be able to finally see what lies under Antarctica?
Yes, there is...
Tiny part.
Yeah, a little part. Yeah, that's true, because we do want to find out what that continent really looked like.
But obviously the consequences of that warming
are quite dire, because what it means is that the land ice in Antarctica is melting. For that ground to surface, the ice that's there now will have melted and added to the Antarctic Ocean, and in turn increases the world's sea level.
Another thing I was surprised by was seeing some of the penguins in your film. They were exhibiting some pretty weird behavior too, right?
Yes, yes. There's the suicidal penguin debate. We noticed certain penguins wandering off, leaving their colony, which is unusual behavior for a penguin anyways. But instead of walking along the shoreline, where some scientists believe is the route to take in finding a new place for their colony, these individual penguins were walking deep into the continent, away from the shoreline. And some scientists see that as suicidal behavior. Why would they walk into the continent deliberately away from their food supply, which is the water?
Well, when we tend to talk about climate change, obviously it's usually doom and gloom, but Antarctica is sort of a beacon of hope, isn't it?
Yes, one of the good news stories to come out of Antarctica this year is that the ozone hole has not only stopped growing, it's actually begun to shrink.
It's shrinking. How's that?
Well, it came about, I think, from an international communal effort known as the Montreal Protocol. This is when the world community came together and agreed to stop using chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs. At the time, they thought it would take about 50 years to have an effect on the ozone hole, and we're about 25 years ahead of schedule.
But it's also the one continent on Earth that no nation has laid a claim to, isn't that
That's
correct?
right, yeah, yeah. Back in 1958, the Antarctic Treaty was introduced, and 12 nations at the time signed it, agreeing to jointly administer a continent rather than fight over its ownership. And today there are 48 nations that are signatory to the treaty. So yes, it's very unique that way too. But it does prove that when we do work together as a global community, we can affect change.
Oh, heartwarming! Better than global warming, heartwarming. Thank you so much, Mark Terry, for joining us today on Ziyology.
My pleasure, thank you.